Welcome in to another episode of the Outsider Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Drew Landry, and thank you for listening to the best politics podcast west of I-35. In today's episode, I'm going to give you some insider detail from the outsider. Funny how that works. On how Governor Greg Abbott was able to push through the voucher program in a place where it always dies. And the place where that always dies is the Texas House of Representatives. So let's just get right into it. All right. Let's understand that the school voucher conversation, the whole school voucher program, all of that has been around in American politics for about 70 years. I've written about this issue for years now, especially in the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, and there's a couple articles that I wrote about it in the Dallas Morning News. You are free to find those, and how I would often get into some back and forth style opinion pieces with another community author in the Lubbock AJ. So when we talk about this issue, the whole thing stems from what Nobel laureate Milton Friedman argued in an essay about how there needs to be a school choice, about how there needs to be a school voucher that can help along with this. Okay, and so let's understand the mindset about the whole quote-unquote school choice conversation. It wants people to think that you're stuck in a school, that you're predetermined by your zip code. So if you live in the Dallas area, or you live in the Austin area, or in some suburb, that this argument makes you feel that you are only beholden to the school that is in your zip code. That's not true. Okay, but not many people really want to know that. I mean, you can go, excuse me again, you can go into any school that you want to go to. And that often gets lost in the conversation because, they bring up other things like, well, you still got to pay a property tax. Well, of course you do. You're living in the city. I mean, do you just suddenly want other services to stop? It's really ridiculous as to how far these arguments go. But that said, it's trying to make people feel trapped in a school setting that is bound by their zip code. And so the argument continues to say that if parents had a choice, then they could take their child or children from schools that they're predetermined into any other school that they may want to go to. So they may want to go to a school across town. They may want to go to another private school that's in the neighborhood, or whatever the case may be, and they'd be able to use taxpayer money to fund this choice. And how this would operate is in many ways. All right, states do different things with this. Okay, states that have adopted this sort of program do it in a variety of ways. And one way that they like to do is what's known as a voucher. All right, this whole voucher thing is more or less like a coupon, or you could think of it as a gift card. Say if you get a $25 or $50 gift card to Walmart or Starbucks or Popeyes or Chick-fil-A, insert place here where you get a gift card, and you go in there and you spend $30 on a $50 gift card, and you've got $20 left over. Okay, that gift card covered your purchases. Same to be said about a voucher. All right, the state gives you this coupon, this gift card, for in order to pay for your tuition to whatever school that you're going to go to. Okay, then you have a thing called an education savings account, where the state sets up an additional account that is only made for education purposes. And the purchases that you make have to be reinforced. You have to show proof of purchases and all this sort of stuff, that they're actually going towards education purposes, and they're meant to pay the tuition, and in some regards they can pay for other things such as a uniform or whatever the case may be, but it's usually some set amount. All right. And then other states like to do a bit of a scholarship program. Again, you apply into it, and then if you're allowed in and you qualify for a certain tier or a certain amount of money from the state through this scholarship. All right. To somebody who has studied education for as long as I have and has been in education for as long as I've had, these are quite simply one thing. They're all voucher programs. Okay. Other people like to call it, they like to use the buzzword and so they're in the propaganda machine of calling it school choice programs and all this stuff. But the program in and of itself is using public dollars for private education purposes. More or less, that's usually what people do. They don't have to do that. They can go to another public school. A charter school is a particular public school. Right? It technically is a public school that was set aside. It was created by the board for a particular purpose, and it can do a variety of things. All right. There's other aspects within charter schools that make it very controversial, and you can use a voucher program to go into a charter school. All right. Now, let's think about here what the governor has wanted. He wants to do an education savings account. Okay, all right. Let's talk about this. When he wanted to do this in 2023, he didn't really care what it was. He called it education freedom, as if you didn't have it to begin with. But it's to make you feel trapped and that somehow you don't have any education freedom, so we have to give it to you. I mean, it's a preposterous starting point, all right, premise that we're even having this conversation, but that's what it is, okay? So that the government will then fund your ability to do this, all right? Well, let's understand what these accounts, all these voucher programs don't do, okay? They don't guarantee anyone's admission. All right, let's understand, if you want to go to a private school, fine, no problem. But you, yourself, your child has to apply for it. All right, they may ask extra information about family backgrounds. They may ask things about your religious backgrounds. They may ask things about if you're, what your parental information is, and they may ask extra questions to get extra information that a public school wouldn't normally ask, okay? So, because every private school has their admission policies, and they get to admit people who they want to admit. It's their school, okay? So what this voucher does, what any of these voucher programs do, without question, is all that they're able to really help you do is help you pay for the tuition. But how helpful is it going to be if you apply and you're denied? Okay? Not a whole lot of help. It's going to be rather helpless. And side note, when I used to use X, my account's still there. I don't use it a whole lot anymore, if any at all. But I got into this conversation with one of these voucher advocates. He graduated from Tech with a PhD in economics, and he I don't know what he does now. I don't want to begrudge him in any particular way or belittle him. He's a very smart guy. He worked in the Trump administration in the first term, but I just can't think of his name off the top of my head. We got into this exchange on X. And I would ask him, I said, what choice do you have if the school denies you? And what if there's a wait list? What choice do the parents have? He couldn't really give me a good answer. And I think that exchange, it's from a year or two ago. You kind of have to look through it. I think that exchange is still on his ex profile. You just have to kind of look through it all. But that's the constant hang-up that a lot of these voucher advocates have. If I feel that the school that my child's going to, I'm a parent and my child's in a quote unquote failing school, and I want to take my child out of that school and put it into a private school, and now that private school doesn't allow me in, denies my child. Well, or I'm waitlisted for like 2 years. How am I supposed to get in? How is this program supposed to help me? These are things that the voucher advocates never talk about. This is something that they never ever want to ever defend because it's indefensible. Let that be clear. All right? But that aside, going back to this idea that they want you to feel trapped, so these voucher programs are going to be very helpful to get you in and give you this sort of freedom. Okay, so the education savings account that the governor now wanted, remember in 2023, he called for education freedom. He was pretty much looking for anything. He kind of makes it more narrow as the session went on, but at the end of that session, he didn't get it. Okay? He didn't get what he wanted. And the first two special sessions had nothing to do with his voucher program, had to do with property tax relief. Then in the summer, you had the Kim Paxton impeachment trial, which that was a sham in and of itself. And then later in the fall, you had a special session called for the voucher program. All right. Then it was almost there, and then you had 21 Republicans, along with all the Democrats, vote to remove the voucher program from HB1 in a special session. And that kind of sealed the fate for these 21 maverick Republicans. Abbott was bound to keep calling special sessions after special sessions and then go after them in the primary. And now he's got them on the record against his program. All right? Let's also note the fact that there's stories out there that Abbott was being vindictive. All right? You didn't support my policies in the regular session. You didn't prioritize my things. I'm not going to prioritize your things. You're not going to do what I want, so I'm not going to sign your bills. And so in his veto message, he would often put, this can be brought up again, but nothing is more important than education freedom. So it was basically saying, do my stuff first, and then we'll somehow find time for yours. This happened to Travis Clardy. This happened to Ernest Biles. This happened to numerous maverick rural Republicans who went against Abbott on the voucher deal. So let's also remember this. When he's going after these rural Republicans, these brave maverick Republicans who stood up against the voucher program, which is the only thing that they've disagreed with the governor on, by the way, he doesn't use that in the primary campaign. He uses things like the border, which polling will suggest among Texas Republicans, that's the top issue that they were really caring about in 2024. All right? Special thanks to Joshua Blanks and James Henson at the Texas Politics Project, who have this data available for people to look at. All right? So you can find this. I'm not saying anything that is unknown at this moment. So Abbott is an astute politician, and he's going to utilize this knowledge to foment against these 21 Republicans to go against them. Now, of those 21, 5 did not seek re-election. So now he has 16 Republicans he's going to go after. And he's going to get them. All right, he's pretty much going to win this thing. A lot of those people who voted against him on the voucher was deemed weak on the border. Therefore, the Republican primary voter voted them out. Abbott avidly campaigned against them and said, I can't trust Travis Carty on the border. I can't trust Hugh Shine on the border. I can't trust Glenn Rogers on the border. I can't trust Steve Allison on the border. He even did the same thing to Stan Lambert and Drew Darby. The thing about Darby and Lambert and Gary Van Dever is that they won. But that wasn't enough. Now, he feels as if he's won his legislative battle. He no longer has to persuade, which is what Perry had to do, and he failed. What Bush had to do, and he failed. Abbott is saying, no way am I failing on this. Persuasion is no longer going to work. I'm going to have to use brute force. I'm going to have to just beat them over the head with threats. It's the Abbott method. All right? So this is how he's going to get his agenda through. Because he felt like he had the numbers there to even begin with. Okay? So as we go into the 2025, the 89th regular session, this is one of his big agenda items. It was an education savings account. It was part of his emergency item list. The Senate passed it really with no problem. I mean, the Democrats are very much outnumbered in the Texas Senate. They don't really have much of a say there. The best they could probably do there is try to filibuster. But if you're going to, how on earth are you going to filibuster for 140 days? I mean, that would, that's just not going to happen. So passing this in the Senate has never been a problem. The problem has always been the Texas House, because there's always been a strong number of a contingency of these rural Republicans who would always stand up and say, this is going to hurt my district. I'm not going to do it. Sorry. Period. The end. We'll do everything else you want to do, but not this. That happened with Bush. That happened with Perry. Even though they would reject the arguments that the rural Republicans would make, they'd say that's not going to happen. Even though in other states that it has. Like, for instance, they would, one thing that they would say, well, it's not going to hurt public education. Go look at the state of Indiana. Go look at the state of Iowa. Go look at the state of Florida. Go look at the state of Arizona. It absolutely is hurting the funding of public education. Well, no school has ever closed down. I can give you two examples of this. Go Google Union Duggar in 2013 and go Google Turkey Run High School in Indiana, and you will see that the voucher programs and the lack of funding that the state gave forced those schools to close down. Turkey Run ended up having to consolidate with a local rival. That happened. These are all real things. They say it's never happened. I just gave you two examples, which means it's just a bunch of malarkey. All right. But Abbott has a different route. It's no longer persuasion, it's force. And Brendan Rottinghouse out of University of Houston was quoted by saying that. That's one of the things that he's going to make, point he's going to make in the Houston Chronicle. He says Abbott is able to actually shape the Republican Party in his image, which is something that a lot of governors aren't able to do. And do it not through finesse, as Rottinghouse said, but through force. That's a really good point, and that is true. So that's going to be the Abbott way to get through the legislature. So while he had the votes, there's a wrinkle in all this. And the wrinkle's going to come again from the Texas House. There was a movement. There was a slight shake in the foundation that perhaps, okay, that some rural Republicans, along with all the Democrats, would coalesce to try to form an amendment to the state constitution to bring it to a statewide vote. All right? This November, that they would bring that to a vote. Democrats were hoping that Stan Lambert out of Abilene would be the one to do it. This gets out. This plan gets out. There was rumors to say that House Speaker Dustin Burrows was in favor of this. Now, one of the unspoken jobs of being House Speaker is try to protect your members. If they come to you and say, Mr. Speaker, I can't take this vote, it's going to hurt me back home. You as Speaker, one of your constituencies is your House member, are your House members. And if they come to you and say, I can't do this, can you help me out? Then you find a way to help out your members. That doesn't really get a lot of attention. So maybe Speaker Burrows, who has a veteran of the legislature who served in the House, Bob Duncan as his chief of staff, has learned a lot about this sort of speakership and about this sort of job. The rumor and innuendo was that he was in favor of it. That if he felt that if the members brought it forward, let's see what happens. If you have the votes, bring it forward. Okay? This gets out. And then Governor Abbott gets involved. Abbott brings these lawmakers in and says, if anybody votes to change this bill or votes to bring this to a statewide vote, I'm going to veto all of your bills. I will personally make sure that you get nothing done in this session. Now, you may say, okay, so what? I mean, why don't they just do it anyway? Well, I mean, it's kind of tough to go back home and say that you helped pass so many things when all of your bills get vetoed and all everyone else's bills don't. That's a tough sell to the constituents back home. So they feel the pressure. I mean, there's no persuasion here. This is flat out do it or not. You could say it's bullying. You could say it's, he's extorting, using power in an abrasive manner. All of these adjectives and all of these descriptors fit the bill. They really do. So Abbott makes these threats. And then they coalesce and say, this isn't going to happen. We just can't do it. Why were the Democrats wanting a Republican to bring it up, especially a rural one? Well, I talked to, this is what I talked about on Talking Points last week with Jen Phillips, was that, they wanted to think that this was going to be a bipartisan deal, that perhaps it wouldn't just be one party trying to do it. You'd have the old contingency of the rare coalition of the rural Republicans and all the Democrats, a sizable number of the Republicans getting with the Democrats to bring this forward, to try to force this vote and truly test, do you have a statewide mandate to do a school voucher program? Okay? Interesting. Well, Abbott's threats come to fruition. The Republicans back off. And then Abbott calls a caucus meeting. He says, I want you all to meet with me. And then they have this meeting. And then Abbott has on the phone President Donald Trump, the 45th and 47th president, on the line. He has him on speakerphone. And for over 8 minutes, he's doing his usual Trump thing. I mean, he's, we call it, what we would usually call it is a ramble, but he calls it the weave. And, that's, you bring in random stuff all at the same time and it makes sense somewhere at the end. that's the Trump way of talking. And he says, look, I'll endorse you. No one loses in Texas without, if I endorse them, I've got the magic touch in your state, and we're going to bring education back to your state, and you're going to be able to do great things with it. This is so important for my stuff. So get this done today. Blame me if you want to, all that. The reason we know that this happened is that Quorum Report editor Scott Braddock, and a friend of mine, reported this. Made it quite clear. He had a YouTube video of it. You can find it on YouTube. And there it is. There he is talking for 8 minutes about the things that I just mentioned to you. So not only has Abbott put the screws to anyone who has a doubtful feeling, but then he brings in the president, who has a tremendously dedicated following in his own party, and who is asking them to vote on this. How often do we see presidents get involved in state politics? Not very much at all. We don't really see that truly taking place. So this was a unique moment. And as I often like to say, unique moments bring out unique things. And this is right there with it. So we have the cajoling. We have the full court press that Abbott puts out there. The Democrats put forward a lot of amendments. All of them get tabled. And there were some pretty good ones. Let's put a cap on this. I mean, Harold Dutton out of the Houston area said, the money for this is not enough. Let's expand it. Because in his area, the price for his private schools is, the very prestigious ones are over $30,000. So, I mean, if you're a family and you want to take them to a private school, that $10,000 voucher is just going to help you. You just get a $10,000 discount. A third of your payment just went away. But it's interesting though about Democrats tried to change this in so many ways. Republicans didn't try to change it at all. You want to tell me who's in charge of the Texas Republican Party? Interesting. So here we have the vote. It takes place. Only two Republicans are going to vote against it. Gary Van Dever and former House Speaker Dade Phelan. Even House Speaker Dustin Burrows votes for the bill. Okay? Which, side note on this, he's played a lot of hokey pokey on this issue in the past. You can, you can find how in 2014, 2015 he was in favor of it. Then he votes for the Herrero amendments in 17, 19, and 21. Then he's against it in 23 and. Well, he's now for the voucher bill in 23, and now he's in favor of it here in 25. So, it's an interesting back and forth that he's done. Maybe he's always been in favor of it, and he was just, playing politics and playing, being cagey with it during that time. But it doesn't matter. He's going to vote for it. You have, I think, one or two members who were sick that day, who were out with an excused absence. And so that's the vote. 85-63. Who votes for it? A lot of the rural Republicans who voted against it back in 2023. Ken King, who's now the State Affairs Chair, who represents a lot of the panhandle, stair steps down into the Permian Basin, and a lot in that oil patch. Long opponent of school vouchers. He votes for it. Stan Lambert, who voted against it in 23, he voted for it. Drew Darby, who voted against it in 23, voted for it. All right? And a lot of those guys who voted against it in 23, who didn't come back because they lost their primary or a runoff. They were replaced with people who voted for it. All right. So Abbott got the House that he wanted. He got the vote that he wanted. He got the pressure that he wanted. And he got the result that he wanted. Now, let's be clear. The House version is a bit more tweaked than the Senate version. And I don't know if the Senate, at this moment of this recording, has accepted those changes. If Senator Creighton has accepted those changes, Lieutenant Governor Patrick wants him to. They don't want this to go to conference. They want to just accept the changes, get it to Abbott's desk, let the governor sign it, and let the deal be over. Let Texas join the numerous other states that have voucher programs. That's kind of what he wants them to do. I totally understand that political perspective. I mean, if you have been advocating for this issue for the years that you have, you take what you're given. You take it, and then in future sessions you tweak it, you improve it, you listen to the problems that have happened in the last 2 years, and then you improve on those problems. That's what you do. And I totally see that taking place. We know that Lieutenant Governor Patrick is going to run for a 4th term. I have no reason to believe that Abbott won't run for a 4th term in 2026. We know that Kim Paxton is not going to come back as Attorney General. And we know that Controller Glenn Hagar is no longer the controller. He's now the chancellor at Texas A&M. So we'll have some new people, definitely some new people going into the executive branch. The question remains, what will happen in 2026? Lots of things to really wait on. Don't know what the mood is going to be yet, but we can kind of get the idea that if things keep going the way that they are right now, it's not looking too good for the president's party, as midterms usually don't. But look, anything can happen. We know that. That said, it looks as if that Texas is on the cusp of joining several states, that it's now the crown jewel of the school voucher movement. And you may wonder, well, why would Abbott be against a statewide vote? If he's so confident that he has a mandate, that so many people are in favor of it, why would he be against bringing it to the voters? Because you've seen other conservative states vote it down. Okay? There's many examples of this, and one that comes right off the top of my head is the ever so conservative state of Kentucky. Kentucky had this on the ballot in 2024. Kentucky overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump in that election, and it's 8 electoral votes. Went straight to him. Okay? But also an overwhelming majority voted against the voucher program. And Abbott doesn't want to take that gamble. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want such a conservative state like Texas to do what Kentucky did. So this is their opportunity. This. And he's not going to let anything fumble through. So did Abbott use persuasion? Did he have a bit of a touch with this? No, not at all. He used brute force. It was very brutish, if you will. Without question. All right? So that's how all this happened. That's how we got the House to pass something that has constantly failed time and time again. Is that good? Is this going to be the Abbott way to get his way? Because he doesn't like dealing with the legislature. We know this. We know this. This has been the worst kept secret throughout Austin, is that Abbott doesn't like dealing with the legislature. We saw that a lot in his first 2 terms. And in this 3rd term, we've even seen a lot of it too. Quite frankly, what we have seen is more of this. And it's like, if you want more of brute force, then you're going to have to vote for Abbott. If you don't want that, if you actually want somebody to deal with the legislature in a different way, then he doesn't look like he's going to be your choice. You may want to have somebody else. But we also know that while Abbott is a prolific politician and an astute reader of the political wind vane, as my late friend Jay Leeson would say, and he made a good drawing of that. We also know he's a prolific fundraiser. And if any Democrat is going to try to challenge him, now is the time that you want to start announcing that you're going to challenge and run for the, challenge Abbott or run for the governorship and start fundraising right now. But, the Democrats just got a new state chair, so, they're, who knows what they're up to. That said, what's next for the legislature? Well, passing this budget, which I think they've done. Getting this big agenda item through was that really took the air out of the entire session. So you're kind of like, well, we got this done. Now what? What else do we got? What else on the governor's agenda? That is up for them to decide. But when we talk about Abbott and when he's finally done being governor, whenever that is, we have to remember that he dealt with the legislature much differently than his predecessors. Whether that's good or bad is up to you to decide that. But if I was on the Republican side and the governor was constantly threatening me, I think, do you either stand by your principles or do you stand by the fact that you may not get anything done? We saw what happened with some of these Republicans who went with the latter. All right. Well, that's all for this episode. Thank you so much for listening in. Please consider, if you are a free subscriber, please consider upgrading your subscription. Follow me on Blue Sky if you want. It'd be great if you did. I'm at drewlandry.substack.com. That's my handle there on Blue Sky. And I appreciate you listening, and we'll see you again very soon.